So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Tzayelic lineage, so then we can understand the time of the end as per Yeshayahu the prophet. We find layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries. As we read it in Yeshayahu, we understand very precisely then the first holy city on the land of Cush, where then the city of the Messiah then returns as then the first place where the first cities first came from regarding the holy instructions. So then let's study then what's going on in the world, because these last few days it was an absolutely avalanche of new information as far as we can understand from the layers of the Gentiles versus then the layers of tabernacling. Daniel, the 11th chapter. As we understand, Daniel was a very prominent politician of his time. He was responsible for the kingdom's trade. And then, a couple of days ago, we were explaining situations regarding Egypt and its important position as far as we can understand from the holy instructions. And then great news also for Egypt, because the Prime Minister of Egypt is also making a deal with the authorities of Libya. In Egypt will start training soldiers to get this situation regarding ISIL then under the control. The article comes in a very important moment. So then the Mr. Prime Minister of Egypt, Mr. Ibrahim Mahlab, is visiting then with the Libyan counterpart Abdullah al-Thani in Cairo, the very center of Egypt. Very important and extremely significant visit, because whatsoever these gentlemen are working must work. And we have the backing from the holy instructions giving us this understanding very precisely in Daniel chapter number 11 and verse number 8, where then Egypt receives arms from the Soviet Union, yet gathering themselves as a force as it was in the past, but not via force but via protection of ships on behalf of the new system. So then, this truly regarding this first push in changing then the ISIL, or then the very brave sons of Ishmael, from doing what they are doing at the moment, and then refining them to receive then the stick of authority found in Ezekiel the 37th chapter. So then this truly is a very great news. Let's then wait for more information, because this information came straight from the Arab news, and it's very reliable, as you can understand, because there were talks before related with the forces of Egypt. But what would be then the situation regarding Egypt? As we can understand, they're going only to train soldiers at this time. But Egypt's role is much larger than they can ever dream of. The situation regarding Egypt at the time, it is so crucial. The entire northern Africa, and also the alignment of the sons of Ishmael regarding then Hagar and her husband Ibrahim, as then they are rescuing what they used to be in the past. So the role of Egypt, not only they are going to organize and stabilize northern Africa, but also there is a preparation of the sons of Ishmael, so then they will receive the stick of authority of trade, as it was then centuries ago. So very much great news. We can understand at this point the importance also of the Soviet Union regathering themselves as a huge force, because we know then verse 1:4, you find then 6 verses later then the Soviet Union later coming with much equipment. So then, because of this understanding, what can we then make out of beyond this point where Egypt then trained the soldiers, not only of Libya, but the countries around then Egypt must be then obviously influenced by the power of Egypt and then restoring its former glory. Later on, then we find when these forces are then stabilized, then there are some skirmishes coming. But we know what these are, because not only the sons of Ishmael must be then in a place where they can change themselves. So there is a time of transition from the existing position that they are at, as far as trying to become a caliphate or then promote some sort of Islamic state of these types of views, and then changing of what then the Quran has stated it. They are the Islamic people, and they understand the works and the prophecies of Muhammad, for instance, and obviously hospitality and being kind firstly then must be exercised, and Egypt is part of this system. So then, as far as we can read, there are other situations going on, since this is a very special edition because of so much coming in this next topic. We find then some of the Hebrew words used, as far as we can read from Daniel the 11th chapter. Some of these words are very special. Some of them were used by the translators in the wrong place. However, they don't change much the understanding of these, other than the main content regarding the positionings of these forces. As it was explained before, the Northern Kingdom is a huge force, as they were back then, and they are returning, and they are making a huge comeback, and the utmost important objective at this time is then providing Egypt with as much arms as they can handle it for the stabilization of northern Africa, and also lining up the sons of Ishmael then receive the stick of authority of trade. It does not mean that they're going to take place of China. That's not the point. But they are obviously a great influence because of the amount of crude they own on their land. And then there is a partnership of crude and then logistics, and then the sons of Ishmael related with the freighters of the earth. China does then the linking, and then China is the power factory of this world. Until we get to this point of the second transition, we then evaluate what's going on then as far as the new market. But prior of going over there, let's then establish a few understandings for those scholars who like to study the Holy Instructions. Only please get the original manuscripts of the Hebrews, so then you can do a proper study. As we read then, for instance, in many sections, we read the 10th, the 11th, and 12th. Some of these words, for instance, Northern Kingdom, it states the word 6828. And then in other areas of the same chapter 11 gives us then north with the same understanding. For instance, let me give you an example. 6828 explains of an area, and then south explains 5045. But what we are dealing with is beyond the rivers of Ethiopia would be then the word related with south, not as then 5045, but southern of, or southbound. The same way in some areas of the 11th chapter it explains kingdom of the north, but truly the understanding is northbound towards. So we should take these apart and then absolutely understand the flow of these armies, because we do understand there are skirmishes going on in the 11th chapter, and many people during wars, they always have a danger of not having their lives anymore. But as far as we can understand from then, beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, is what then Yirmiyahu the prophet prophesied regarding then the violent ones, and then standing for on behalf of those who want to establish division. And there is also another movement of arms coming from the south side, or the southbound people, then going northbound and then doing warfare. So these areas are extremely important because the flows of these events determines what comes up after then Egypt to train those soldiers in Libya and many other countries. So then Egypt becomes then the center focus point of stabilization of the region. Great news. We should hear, and then we should be on the radio listening to the news from Arabia. And obviously some of these countries in Arabia, they also have the shortwave radio programs yet. And then either in Arabic, and best would be obviously in English if they transmit the information towards the west, and then the islands of the Pacific. Only understand there they have no computers, most of those islands, and shortwave radio coming from Arabia would be extremely helpful, so then these people can understand what's going on. But then, not only this, China has done it again. And yesterday, the Prime Minister or the Premier of China went and he saved Germany. Let's make this extremely clear, because Germany is in a position at this very moment, they are in the worst crisis ever since 2008-2009. The train drivers are going to strike. Also, the pilots of the Lufthansa cargo area of this airliner also going on a strike. The Eurozone is not doing nicely as they thought of, and the nations they would try to adhere to each other, they are simply no longer, because the system is failing. The West is nearly bankrupt. And let's then understand what's going on, because the Premier of China went yesterday and visited with Merkel, then the leader over there of Germany, and they had lots of situations going on, and some of these deals or partnerships reaching nearly 100 or so, related with logistics and healthcare in many of these areas. And thanks to China that went over there and saved Germany, because without China, Germany would go down along with the entire European Union, because the Eurozone is a failure. I have to report these very importantly. But China was able to get there, and the situation then has changed a bit. The next few days we should have more information regarding these new deals. And then most importantly also is understanding the new Chinese system, as it was then predicted before, years back. We read then from the news that there are some fund or then hedge fund that are then involved with many kinds of internet trade systems, and some of these, for instance, the Bao fund has then lots of money placed aside, 92 times 12 digits in USD, and the system is becoming more available. The first part of the system was then the Alibaba, the most important system in the United States at the moment. Prior, more than 12 months earlier, mentioned before, the Chinese system is coming, and the third step of investment is also coming. So then, that is a very important information regarding this system. Alipay, for instance, it is then a firm that takes care of payments done via online. Not only this, but they are transforming the market, and they are having some platforms where a person can also invest, and they have their own banking system coming up. Shortly in the next 6 months they will to have this important system, Alibaba, which went public in the United States earlier this month in a record-breaking 25 times 12 digits, said on a website Monday its financial plans to establish a bank headquartered in Hangzhou, then to use the internet banking services. It will take 6 months for the new bank to begin its activation, and it depends upon the okay from the bank regulators then to start their trade. This is extremely important because it's already showing the money of the people stored in their computers and their systems, and then China becoming the top and most important system of trade of this planet. We read these, we find this information very true, and then shortly after we understand that this icon of investment is going to be posted in their own system. So the system truly is coming. As it was predicted before, very precisely as per the instructions, Alibaba's system came, is the best in the United States, and then there is already a bank with headquarters in China related with the payment of these online transactions, and only in China. And then the next step won't be very much long, then the investment icon in the system, and then each computer then having money and linked with China directly. It is coming very fast because these systems, these are private banks. Let's understand these are private banks related with online investments and online platforms, so a person can pay, can invest, can receive, can send money. And truly what was then said before is coming through. Great news from every direction. We find the holy instructions even more interesting reading, because the 11th chapter, we are very in the midst, in the thick of it. Related with the 11th chapter from the 8th verse up to the 10th, and then the transformation of Egypt becoming then the leaders of training the armies and their neighbors, and the important point of then Egypt becoming a power force, so then the sons of Ishmael can make a transition from where they are at and then becoming what they were during the time of Ibrahim and then Ishmael the king. So please stay tuned, much more coming up. Later on I'm going to evaluate each part of these, so then we can understand how this relates with the 12th chapter of Daniel, and then what Daniel prophesied as far as the knowledge would increase for the purposes of trade. So then we can understand also tabernacling, because then the violent ones, those who are beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, they're going to fight on behalf of establishment of the vision, explaining then the city of Cush, or then the land of Cush. We may say the city is going to be there on the land of Cush, the holy city on the land of Cush, and then providing more so then this situation can come through. So please stay tuned. Great news. Much more coming up.